The ultimatum. The council chamber stretched vast and imposing, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that cast shifting shadows across the assembled delegates. 47 species sat in perfect formation, their diverse forms united by a single purpose that had governed the galaxy for over 3,000 years. The hegemony had brought peace through strength, order through control, and prosperity through absolute submission. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the chamber, her simple human form dwarfed by the towering representatives surrounding her. The Zephyrian delegate loomed 12 feet tall, its chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's ethereal light. Beside it, the gaseous Veilborn shifted like living storm clouds, while the crystalline architects resonated with harmonic frequencies that made the air itself hum with tension. High Chancellor Vextar of the Dominary rose from his throne-like seat, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture that commanded absolute silence. His species had ruled the hegemony since its inception, their natural telepathic abilities making them perfect arbitrators of galactic law. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of millennia. Human, his voice echoed through both sound and thought. You stand accused of violating the sanctuary protocols established for your species' protection. For 2 centuries, we have shielded Earth from the complexities of galactic civilization, allowing your kind to develop in peaceful isolation. Elena's expression remained perfectly calm, almost serene. She had prepared for this moment her entire life, yet the reality felt almost surreal. The most powerful beings in the galaxy were lecturing her about violations, as if humanity were children caught stealing sweets. We are aware of your expansions, Vextar continued, his mental voice growing colder. 7 systems, 14 colonies, populations numbering in the hundreds of millions. You have directly defied our protective mandate. The Krillian delegate, a massive creature resembling a cross between a spider and a mantis, clicked its mandibles in what Elena recognized as their expression of contempt. The humans spread like a plague. It hissed through its translator. They terraform worlds without permission, establish governments without sanction. They showed no respect for the natural order. Elena finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite its quiet tone. Natural order? Is that what we're calling it now? The question sent ripples of shock through the assembly. No species had ever shown such casual disrespect in the council chamber. The very concept was unthinkable. Vextar's psychic presence pressed down on Elena like a physical weight, but she remained standing, her composure unshaken. You dare mock the wisdom that has brought peace to 17,000 worlds. Peace, Elena repeated, as if tasting the word. You mean submission. There's a difference, though I suppose after 3,000 years, you might have forgotten what actual peace looks like. The chamber erupted. Delegates roared, chittered, and resonated with outrage. Several species had to be physically restrained by their neighbors. Elena stood motionless in the center of the chaos, watching with the patience of someone who had expected exactly this reaction. Vextar's mental shout cut through the noise like a blade. Silence. The word carried such psychic force that several smaller delegates actually staggered. When quiet returned, his 4 eyes fixed on Elena with murderous intent. Human, your species has exhausted our patience. The hegemony has decided to offer you one final opportunity to avoid complete annihilation. He gestured, and a holographic display materialized above Elena's head, showing detailed scans of Earth's colonies. You will immediately evacuate all unauthorized settlements. Your populations will return to Earth for re-education. Your leadership will be replaced with hegemony-approved administrators. Your technology will be confiscated and destroyed. The hologram shifted, showing massive fleet formations gathering at the galaxy's edge. Thousands of warships, each capable of cracking planets, hung in perfect formation like schools of mechanical predators. Failure to comply within 72 standard hours will result in the complete sterilization of all human presence in the galaxy, Vextar announced. This is not a negotiation. This is your final warning. Elena studied the fleet displays with genuine interest, her head tilting slightly as she examined the tactical formations. When she finally looked up, something in her expression had changed. The diplomatic mask had slipped just enough to reveal something that made several delegates unconsciously step back. "That's quite a fleet," she said conversationally. "Very impressive. Traditional formation patterns, optimal firing solutions, overlapping, defensive grids. Someone clearly put a lot of thought into this." The casual analysis sent another wave of confusion through the chamber. Most species would be begging for mercy or raging impotently at this point. Elena sounded like she was reviewing a particularly interesting academic paper. "Your compliance," Vextar demanded, his psychic voice sharp with irritation. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note that none of them had heard before from any species. It wasn't fear or anger or desperation. It was something far more dangerous. It was amusement. "You know," she said, "we've been wondering when this conversation would happen. 200 years is a long time to wait, but we figured you'd get around to it eventually." The architect delegate's crystalline form chimed with harmonic confusion. "Wait, you have been expecting this?" "Oh, absolutely," Elena replied with a slight smile. "Did you really think we didn't know about the surveillance? The monitoring stations, the protective fleet positioned just outside our sensor range. We've known about all of it since year 3 of the Sanctuary Protocols." Vextar's psychic presence wavered with uncertainty. This wasn't how these conversations typically went. "If you knew, why did you violate the protocols?" Elena's smile widened just slightly. "Because we got bored." The simple statement hung in the air like a physical thing. 47 species stared at the lone human who had just declared boredom as her people's motivation for defying the most powerful force in galactic history. "Bored," the Krillian delegate repeated slowly. "Terribly bored," Elena confirmed. 2 centuries of sitting in one solar system, pretending to be the primitive little species that needed protection. Do you have any idea how stifling that gets? How insulting?" She began to pace, her movements casual and relaxed despite the thousands of weapons trained on Earth. "We're explorers by nature. We're builders, innovators, survivors. You locked us in a cage and told us it was for our own good. Did you really expect us to just sit there forever?" "You are insects," snarled the Vorthan delegate, its serpentine form coiling with aggression. "Barely evolved primates who discovered fire yesterday in galactic terms. You should be grateful for our protection." Elena stopped pacing and looked directly at the Vorthan. "Insects," she repeated thoughtfully. "That's interesting. Tell me, how long did it take your species to develop faster than light travel after discovering atomic energy?" The question seemed to puzzle the Vorthan. 4,000 years. But what relevance? 4,000 years, Elena nodded. The galactic average is about 3,500 years, if I remember correctly. Quite respectable. She paused. "We did it in 250. The silence that followed was different from the previous outbursts. This was the silence of calculations being frantically performed, of assumptions being suddenly questioned. "Impossible," whispered the ethereal delegate, its voice like wind through crystal chimes. "No species develops that rapidly. We also developed quantum computing, antimatter containment, and terraforming technology in that same time frame." Elena continued conversationally. "Our theoretical physicists were having fun with multidimensional mathematics before we even left our home system. But I'm sure you knew all that from your monitoring." Vextar's psychic presence was now tinged with something that might have been concern. "Your point, human." Elena's expression grew serious for the first time since entering the chamber. "My point, Chancellor, is that you've made a critical error in judgment. You've been so focused on treating us like children that you never stopped to consider what we might have become while you weren't paying attention." She gestured toward the holographic fleet displays. "That's a very impressive armada. 47 species worth of military might, all focused on crushing one supposedly primitive world. It must have taken years to organize, tremendous resources to assemble. The delegates waited, uncertain where this was leading. Alina's smile returned, but now it carried an edge that made the temperature in the chamber seem to drop. The question is, do you really think we spent 200 years sitting quietly in our system, just waiting for you to eventually come knock on our door with an eviction notice? Before anyone could respond, she tapped a small device on her wrist. This is Ambassador Vasquez to Fleet Command. Please inform Admiral Chen that the Council has made their position clear. He may proceed with the demonstration. The implications of her words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Alina continued speaking into her communicator with the casual tone of someone ordering lunch. Oh, and Admiral, they seem particularly proud of their fleet formations. Very traditional, very predictable. I thought you'd find that interesting. She looked up at the stunned faces surrounding her. 72 hours, you said. That should be more than enough time. The last thing the delegates heard before Alina's holographic image flickered and vanished was her quiet chuckle and 7 words that would echo through galactic history. You really shouldn't have done that. The revelation. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the largest armada in galactic history emerge from hyperspace. The view screen filled with an endless parade of alien warships, each one a masterpiece of destruction honed by millennia of conquest. Dominary dreadnoughts stretched like metallic cities across the void, their hulls bristling with energy cannons. Krillian-high ships moved in perfect swarm formations, while the geometric vessels of the architects pulsed with reality-warping technology. Impressive, Chen murmured, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 68, he had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, though he had often wondered if it would come in his lifetime. Sensor readings, Commander Torres. Commander Isabella Torres looked up from her station, her expression professionally neutral despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. 12,407 ships. Admiral, ranging from frigate class to those dominary city killers. Total estimated firepower could crack a moon. Could crack several moons, corrected Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka from the tactical station. Sir, they're maintaining standard hegemony formation patterns. Overlapping fields of fire, concentrated power projection, defensive screens optimized for traditional energy weapons. Chen nodded slowly. Traditional indeed. How long since the hegemony faced an opponent that required tactical innovation, Commander? According to our intelligence, approximately 800 years, sir. The Keltharen Rebellion was the last organized resistance, and it lasted only 6 months. 800 years of unopposed victory, Chen mused. That's a long time to grow comfortable with your methods. He turned to his communications officer. Lieutenant Park, open a channel to the hegemony flagship. The massive holographic image of High Chancellor Vextar materialized on the bridge, his 4 arms spread in a gesture of supreme authority. Behind him, the council chamber was visible, filled with delegates whose expressions ranged from smug satisfaction to eager bloodlust. Human Fleet Commander. Vextar's psychic voice carried clearly across space. I am High Chancellor Vextar of the Galactic Hegemony. You are Admiral Chen, I presume. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen, United Earth Space Command. Chen replied with a crisp salute. I believe you've met my colleague, Ambassador Vasquez. Your ambassador has been difficult, Vextar replied coldly. She spoke of a demonstration. I trust you understand the futility of resistance. My fleet outnumbers yours by a factor of over 2,000 to 1. Chen glanced at Torres, who was struggling to suppress a smile. 2,000 to 1. Are you sure about that count, Chancellor? Vextar's psychic presence radiated confusion. My sensors are quite precise, Admiral. You have 6 vessels, 6 primitive ships against the might of 47 civilizations. Ah, Chen nodded thoughtfully. I think I see the problem. You're only scanning for active emissions, aren't you? Traditional sensor suites looking for engine signatures, weapon charges, communication arrays. The Chancellor's 4 eyes narrowed. What are you implying? Chen smiled, and something in that expression made several of the council delegates shift uncomfortably. Computer, execute Protocol 7. The space around Earth suddenly erupted with light. What had appeared to be empty void began to shimmer and warp as thousands of cloaked vessels dropped their stealth fields. Ships materialized from nothing, their sleek hulls reflecting starlight as they took formation around the Hegemony fleet. But these weren't traditional warships. They moved wrong, shifted and flowed like living things. Some appeared to be constructed from crystallized energy. Others seemed to phase in and out of visible reality. Several defied basic physics by occupying multiple spatial coordinates simultaneously. What are those? Whispered the ethereal delegate, its voice carrying clearly through the comm channel. Those, Chen replied pleasantly, are what happens when you give a species known for innovation 200 years to work in secret. He gestured to the view screen where more ships continued to materialize. We call them the Ghost Fleet. Would you like to know how many vessels we actually have, Chancellor? Vextar's psychic presence was now radiating something approaching panic. This is impossible. Our sensors showed nothing. Our intelligence networks. Your intelligence networks, Torres interrupted from her station, have been thoroughly compromised for the past century and a half. Every monitoring station, every surveillance probe, every secret observation post. We've been feeding you exactly what we wanted you to see. Chen nodded approvingly. Commander Torres led the intelligence operation. Quite brilliant, really. We learned everything about every species in your hegemony, while you learned nothing true about us. The holographic image flickered as the hegemony ships began frantically recalibrating their sensors. The numbers climbing on their displays defied comprehension. What had been 6 human vessels was now revealing itself to be a fleet of over 15,000 ships, each one incorporating technology that violated everything the Council thought they knew about physics. Impossible, Vextar repeated, but his voice now carried the tremor of dawning realization. No species could develop such capabilities in isolation. No species that you understand, Chen corrected. But then again, you never really tried to understand us, did you? You saw primitive bipeds with basic technology and decided we were essentially clever animals. You missed what makes humanity truly dangerous. He began to pace, his movements casual despite the cosmic forces arrayed around them. We adapt, Chancellor. It's what we do. Every challenge becomes a puzzle to solve. Every limitation becomes a boundary to break. You gave us 2 centuries of challenges. The Krillian delegate's mandibles clicked frantically. Your ships, they violate the fundamental laws of physics. Matter cannot exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy cannot be crystallized into solid form. Cannot. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka looked up from her station with genuine curiosity. We've been doing both for over 50 years. Perhaps your understanding of physics is a bit limited. Chen chuckled. You see, when you locked us in our system, you made one critical assumption. You assumed we would develop along the same paths as every other species. Linear technological progression. Traditional solutions to standard problems. He gestured toward the nearest Ghost Fleet vessel, its hull rippling with impossible geometries. Humans don't work that way. Tell us something is impossible, and we'll find 3 different ways to do it before lunch. Lock us in a cage, and we'll figure out how to make the cage itself into a weapon. The Vorthan delegate's serpentine form was coiled tight with terror. The stealth technology alone. How? Dimensional folding. Torres replied helpfully. We discovered that space-time has some very interesting properties when you approach it from unconventional angles. Your sensors can't detect what technically isn't entirely in this reality. But that's theoretical physics, protested the architect delegate, its crystalline form resonating with distress. No one has successfully weaponized dimensional manipulation. No one you know of, Chen corrected. We've had operational dimensional drives for 80 years, temporal manipulation for 60, reality anchoring for 40. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. Several delegates were frantically consulting their advisors, their voices rising in panic as they began to understand what they were facing. "You've been studying us," Vextar accused, his psychic voice now tight with fear. "Every species, every technology, every weakness." "For 197 years, Chen confirmed. "We know how your ships work, how your weapons function, how your societies are structured. We know your tactical doctrines, your political weaknesses, your economic dependencies." He paused, letting the weight of that knowledge settle over the council. "More importantly, we know that you've grown soft. 800 years without a real challenge. 800 years of overwhelming every opponent through sheer numbers and established technology." The first hegemony ship exploded without warning. Then another. Then a dozen more. No weapons fire had been detected, no energy signatures registered. The massive vessels simply stopped working, their systems failing simultaneously across multiple ship classes. "What did you do?" Vextar roared, his psychic shout causing feedback across the communication channel. "Viral warfare," Tanaka replied matter-of-factly. "We've been inside your computer networks for decades. Every ship in your fleet is running on systems we've had access to since before most of your crews were born." More ships began to fail, their weapons powering down, their engines cutting out. The massive hegemony fleet was rapidly becoming a collection of expensive debris drifting helplessly through space. "This is impossible," the ethereal delegate whispered. "No species has ever. The hegemony has never been challenged by something you couldn't understand." Chen finished. "Never faced an opponent who refused to play by your rules." He walked closer to the holographic display, his expression growing serious for the first time. "You made a fundamental error, Chancellor. You assumed that strength was about size, about raw power, about following established patterns of dominance." The Ghost Fleet began to move, their impossible ships flowing through space like schools of mechanical fish. They surrounded the crippled hegemony vessels, but made no aggressive moves. They simply waited. "Humans understand a different kind of strength," Chen continued. "We understand that real power comes from adaptability, from innovation, from refusing to accept that something cannot be done. You've spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of overwhelming your enemies. We've spent 200 years perfecting the art of making overwhelming irrelevant." Vextar's image flickered as more of his fleet's systems failed. "What do you want?" Chen smiled, and this time the expression was genuinely warm. "We want what we've always wanted, Chancellor. We want to explore. We want to build. We want to meet new species and learn new things and push the boundaries of what's possible." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "What we don't want is to be locked in a cage and told it's for our own good. What we don't want is to be treated like children who need protection from the big scary galaxy." The communication channel crackled with the voices of panicking crews as more ships lost power. The greatest military force in galactic history was being systematically neutralized without a single shot being fired. "The demonstration is complete," Chen announced. "Your fleets are disabled, not destroyed. Your crews are unharmed." This was a message, not a massacre. He leaned forward, his voice carrying clearly despite its quiet tone. "But understand this, Chancellor. We were being polite for 200 years. We played along with your protection protocols because we thought eventually you might treat us as equals. That politeness ends now." Vextar's psychic presence was barely a whisper. "What happens now?" Chen straightened, every inch the military commander who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "Now do you learn to share the galaxy? The sanctuary protocols are ended. Humanity will take its place among the stars, whether you approve or not." He gestured toward the Ghost Fleet, their impossible ships beginning to disperse toward the hyperspace jump points. "We have colonies to establish, worlds to terraform, species to meet. Some of your member civilizations have already reached out to us through back channels. Apparently, not everyone in the hegemony is entirely happy with the current management." The final insult hit home. Even as their fleet lay helpless, the humans were revealing that their intelligence network had penetrated deep enough to turn hegemony members against the Council itself. "This isn't possible," Vextar repeated, but his voice now carried the hollow tone of someone whose worldview had been completely shattered. Chen's image began to fade as the communication channel closed. His final words echoed through the council chamber with the weight of absolute certainty. "Chancellor, you just learned something very important about humanity. When we say something is possible, we don't mean maybe. We mean we've already done it 3 different ways, and we're working on a 4th. The channel closed, leaving the Hegemony Council in stunned silence as 15,000 impossible ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with them the end of 3,000 years of unquestioned dominance. In the command chair of the UES Defiance, Admiral Chen settled back with satisfaction. The demonstration was complete. Now the real work could begin.